Welcome to the Shared Practices podcast. This is season 4, where we're focusing on case acceptance. Some people wonder how Blue Sky Bio can offer such great implants at a significantly lower cost than some of the name brand companies. And Corey Glenn posted, he said that the Sunshine Act allows you to go and see where all these implant companies' money goes. And they want you to believe that the price difference is research and saving orphans, but in reality, the difference is expenditure in reps, marketing, key opinion leader payments, big facilities, big events. And Blue Sky Bio just doesn't do any of that stuff, and it allows them to pass the savings on to you as customers. It's a purely web-based company. I was trying to track down where the headquarters of Blue Sky Bio was from their website to contact them about sponsoring the show. I was having a hard time. There was a few different addresses. Turns out they don't have some crazy big headquarters with all this real estate consuming all this money. And other than the fulfillment center, there's really no location to pay for. So maybe when you're starting off, it's an advantage to have a rep who comes out to your office to teach you. So if you haven't done a residency, you're not comfortable with placing, you're confused by all the components, sure, that's great to have a rep. But once you've got your placement down, you're feeling a whole lot more comfortable, that's when it's time to spread your wings and move on. And if you feel guilty, like, oh, but my rep, blah, 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 you'll see how many times reps switch companies, they quit, they move on. It's not like that one person, you now are indebted to them for the rest of your life. They helped you, you helped them, great, you move on. That's business. If you're ready to stop paying for the overhead of large companies, go to blueskybio.com/store. If you're overwhelmed by the options, you can't go wrong starting with the Biomax line. With one narrow platform for all their implants, it makes restoring and placing that much simpler. blueskybio.com. I am so excited to have with me today another two of my classmates. We had Matt Ford, we had Cameron Stroyan on, and now we have the Davises. So welcome to the show, Danielle and Austin Davis.
Thanks.
Thank you. We're excited to be here.
It's crazy. You guys were the couple in dental school that got married who had the same name before you got married, which is just like, no one had to change anything. No one had to like switch names on it. You're just like, yeah, we're already the Davises. We're still the Davises. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty convenient. It worked out good for us, I think.
You don't have to have like a weird hyphen last name or anything like that. Like, no, I'm a Dr. this with the full hyphen. Like, no, we're just Dr. Davises.
You could be Danielle Davis.
Davis? I think you should. Yeah. No. Okay. So I'm really excited because you guys have a lot that we can delve into, including a recent awesome startup. And you guys have posted about that on the Shared Practices page. So we have a Facebook page and you guys have documented your journey there, as well as a much more in-depth documentation on Dentaltown. So there's a thread. It's 2 young new grads do a startup, which I want you guys to know it is like the worst thread title to have to search for, because it's like a bunch of generic small words and Dentaltown throws out half of them. And then if you actually do the hyphen like you guys do in your thread title, it crashes the search bar for Dentaltown. So it's like to find your thread is so hard. So I'll have a link for it in the show notes. But it's awesome because I love it when you can see from your perspective, from the start, how, each step along the way, as you're in that step, the things that you care about in that moment. So I really appreciate you guys doing such a good job of documenting your journey. So thank you.
Yeah. And I'd like to say that this podcast is the way we got our start with the whole startup. George's podcast on demographics. That was really, we've been tossing around the idea. We've been thinking about it. But that podcast, actually put us into action that's when we found a spot and really started going. So thank y'all.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And I give all the credit to George because you guys definitely implemented his method. So we're referencing an episode where George talked about how he found his practice in a crowded demographic in the Phoenix metro and how there's little pockets of opportunity within a really crowded, large area. And you guys did exactly that. So we'll get to that in a minute. But I want to start back over at the beginning. So you guys graduated the same time I did 3 years ago, which is crazy. It doesn't feel like it's been 3 years. It feels like both longer and shorter. And you've kind of had a lot of different things in the meantime. So let's start off with residency. So there's a lot of pros and cons to AEGDs and residencies and GPRs. And some people, like Paul Goodman, are all about them all the time for everyone. And other people are definitely, not as big of fans of them or don't feel like they're necessary. So, Austin, you found a residency. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so I did an AEGD, a 1-year AEGD, and I did it with a specific goal in mind. I wanted to not just place implants, but to focus my practice on implants. I don't know how I decided that in dental school, but that's what I decided. When I was a know-it-all 4th-year dental student, that I wanted to place implants and I didn't want to do a lot of other things.
And you didn't want to do an oral surgery residency or a perio residency?
Well, I did. I looked into that.
Okay.
But I like restoring implants, and I
get it.
And the AEGD really, so I happened upon this AEGD. It's in Bessemer, Alabama. And all I did basically for an entire year was pull teeth and do implants and dentures.
It's like a dream come true for me. So how many implants did you place? How many, give me some numbers here just so people can get an idea of the scope of your residency.
Yeah, so I placed probably around 70 implants.
Nice.
And then that, I probably restored, where I really learned a lot was I probably restored maybe 300 or 400 implants.
Holy cow.
A lot of them were people's first implants. So other doctors would come in and take hands-on CE courses at our residency. And a lot of times it was, their first implant they're placing. And so I saw a lot of really good implants, and I saw a lot of implants that could be better.
Sure.
And so, you learn how to deal with complications, how to, see a lot of failing implants, taking implants out, restoring tough cases, any kind of case imaginable we were restoring. And so that was super valuable along with, the surgery too. So it's set me up to where now, I was looking the other day and 40% of my total production is from implants or implant related procedures. So, and then the rest of my production from extractions and dentures. So
stuff related. Yeah, it all goes together.
My goal of doing very little general dentistry. About 10% of my production comes from general dentistry.
And just to clarify, this is not in the startup practice that you guys have done together, just so our audience kind of gets the scope of this.
Right. So I currently work for just a small DSO that does dentures and implants only.
Okay.
So Danielle is the startup mastermind. So when talking about the startup, she's the go-to for that.
I think it was a pretty dynamic duo there. I think there was probably a little bit of input from you and maybe some drive from Danielle there. But so before we wrap up this AEGD discussion, because you're living my dream. So is it first off, is it like everything you hoped and more? Like, do you feel like you're happy with your procedure mix right now?
I am. Within the next few years, I want to get to where I'm doing 0 to general dentistry.
Nice.
So I'm definitely continuing in that trajectory. I would not be sad if I never did another filling or crown or root canal or anything like that. So it's definitely worked out good for me.
That's sweet. Well, and that's what I feel like. If people are doing a residency, they should do it for a specific procedure mix. If you're going to do a 1-year AEGD, 1-year GPR, you should go in with, I want to be able to do X, Y, or Z at the end of this. I want to do molar endo. I want to do pedo. I want to do whatever it is that you want to do, and find a program that is specifically tailored towards that and really is going to allow you to crush that procedure and just be like not a real specialist. It's okay. I'm not going to claim that we're,
No, definitely not.
No. But that you have the sheer volume and expertise around a few things that you can be really good at. So you did exactly that, and then it's played really well into what you're doing right now. Versus people who just do it in AEGD because their state board requires it, or because they thought it was a good idea, but then they didn't research it. That's not what we recommend. So good job. Right. You did it awesome. So from there, you guys had a whole bunch of kind of associateships between the two of you. How many, if you could look back and count, how many were there? Do you know?
This is a good question for Danielle to answer. I'll let her talk about that.
I worked at 5 offices before I opened it. Actually 6.
Okay.
So when he did his residency, I worked in a pedo Medicaid office, which was kind of like a mini residency for pedo.
Yeah.
That pays well. Eye-opening. Oh, yeah.
No, but doesn't pay well?
No. No. I mean, I was one of, 5 doctors who was in that practice, and I was the youngest. I was with one other new grad, and it was, whoever grabs whatever first. And I wasn't about to fight other doctors for production. So I drew a minimum, essentially tried to refinance our loans or my loans. And I couldn't because they counted Austin as a dependent and he didn't make enough money. So I had to wait a year.
Pulling some weight there. Thank you, Danielle.
And then we moved to small town Texas. Actually, one of the doctors that had taken one of the implant courses at Austin's residency wanted us to come work for him. And so we moved. We thought small town life would be kind of cute. Yeah. It wasn't. We weren't a big fan. It was kind of in between where we're from. So it was in Beaumont. So it was about 4 hours from Austin and about 7-hour drive from Memphis.
What was the closest big city?
Houston. It was about an hour and a half away from Houston.
Okay. We're like an hour out of Oklahoma City right now in like a town of about 3,000. So compared to that, how big was your town?
It's a lot of blue collar workers, a lot of oil. So people had a lot of money there and there was a good number of people, but it was a transient population. And I mean, we were there for Hurricane Harvey. So the whole town pretty much gets wiped out every 10 years with a hurricane. So,
okay.
Yeah. But I worked at an office down there. Aust was at that one office and he pretty much found out the hard way that he was being used for hygiene checks. And so that doctor could go on vacation and to fix implants.
Yeah.
And so he didn't like it. I was doing pretty good. I was working a lot. It was a small town, so we were doing really well financially. And then there was this one guy I was working 4 days a week. He wanted me 1 day a week. And it was just a strange situation. We couldn't really get out what he wanted from the situation. And one day I met with him. And then a couple weeks later, I told Austin I didn't want to waste my time. And so he went and met with him. And Austin guinea pigged me to the office and said, my wife will come work here 1 day a week. So I got my 5 days a week. And
long story short, we both ended up working there full time together.
Yeah. And we had a really good guarantee. And so he left that office and we worked there for about a year and a few
year and a half, maybe.
This was in the small town or somewhere else?
Mm-hmm. So it was right outside right outside Beaumont, an even smaller town.
Okay. So you guys talk about your student loans. We're coming from Midwestern here, which is I remember when Caleb Stott and I went and interviewed at Midwestern, we described it as like a spaceship, like a shiny new spaceship. It's like all brand new clinic, all the toys. But with that comes a little price tag. So you guys mind talking about kind of student loans, being a married dental couple from Midwestern?
Yeah, so we went to Midwestern, which was a great place. We enjoyed it. And we also got to enjoy a combined $720,000 of student loans.
Which is actually
is actually pretty good for
less than like the full 800. Like most people hit the 400 mark individually. So the fact that you had shared living cost, was that part of it, or how did you?
I think that was part of it, and
only for the last year.
Only the last year, yeah, that's true. Yeah, you weren't.
Yeah, and we got a little help from home here and there for a few things, and so that definitely helped a lot. So we had about $360,000 each. It was pretty even actually. And so combined $720,000. And, I think as with any young dentist, that was definitely weighing on us, probably more than it should have been. And so that is one of the reasons we chose to go to, Beaumont, Texas. We're like, you hear, got to go to rural, got to go to a small town, make money.
Howard Ferran tells people to do that rather than join the military, which is what I did. He's like, yeah, don't join the army. Go to some small town and make a bunch of money that way. And I was like, oh, dang it, I did it wrong. Okay. So you guys did it right, but it didn't end up being what you thought it would be. Right.
So, financially it was good. We worked in a job and we had $1,000 a day guarantee each. Guarantee.
Not too bad.
So that was a pretty good, our first job. It was essentially, that was, 3 months out of our, after I finished that residency. So it was essentially our first job. That's a pretty good first job.
Not too shabby.
And so, financially it was good for us. We were spending no money there.
Nothing to spend money on.
And so we were putting all that money towards our higher interest student loans. So, we paid down the student loans pretty quick there.
No, the thing I'm wondering is, how was working in the same practice? So the two of you, it's like you two, and you're not currently doing that. So that makes me think that this experience in the small town taught you guys, we love each other, but we love each other off work hours and less on work hours. Or did it work out just fine? And now you're just kind of different directions.
Yeah, I don't think we had a problem with it at all. It really wasn't. It wasn't bad. It wasn't something that like, oh, I have to work with Danielle, and I don't think she'd ever say she has to work with me. But it's not that we would. It's not. We would do it again if the
if it was the right thing for you guys.
It's not really our goal, but it definitely wasn't a bad thing.
He just thought up at the thermostat. He liked it really cold, and I liked it warmer.
That's true.
He didn't like any of the cosmetic cases, so we kind of just switched off. Like if I find a patient that had a bunch of implants, I would just give them over to him, and if he had any cosmetic cases, he'd give them over to me. So it worked out pretty good.
Referred to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Nice. Well, cool. Well, so what was the things that you thought that surprised you about small town dentistry and life that made you realize this isn't for us? I think it's absolutely awesome that you guys tried this out and realized I don't want to be here long term. And I think there's a ton of value. We talk about early ownership on the podcast all the time. We have these rock stars on that go straight from dental school to something rural or something in a big city. But I think there's value to trying different practice models, trying different demographics. What did you guys learn from this?
It just had a lot of, on the weekends, we just always wanted to leave. And the town there, people had been there for forever. It was generations and generations of these people, but there was no good restaurants. There was not good hiking. The air quality was horrible because it was by a bunch of refineries. It wasn't for us. Yeah. And we didn't want to stay there. We didn't like, running into all these people that we knew all the time. And it was just different from anything we'd ever experienced. There wasn't, a lot of things to do. You pretty much could go to the gym and go home. And
it's sometimes you don't want to run into your patients on off hours. It's weird to see them at the grocery store or whatever and be like, oh, how are you after that extraction? I really was not hoping to see you until you were all healed up and good to go.
But it was good for us. I mean, we learned there weren't a lot of specialists to refer to. So I got really good at molar endo because there was maybe one or two endodontists and they didn't accept any insurance.
Nice.
And so you learn to do a lot of stuff yourself. And that was really helpful. And we worked for an older doctor and he was a really nice guy.
Cool.
And it was nice to actually have an associateship that wasn't horrible.
Nice. Okay, cool. So let's take this then. You're kind of using the student loans as fuel to figure out how we're going to move forward with things. You've decided you're not going to do small town. You hear this podcast where George talks about how to find demographics within a large city where you can really crush it and make things work. So how did you decide where to go back to? So Memphis, Tennessee, that's Austin, where you're from, right?
Right. And so we were deciding between Memphis and Austin were the main two. We wanted to be close to family.
Cool.
We've been talking about starting our own family. We wanted to be, close to at least one of our families and doing that. And so, we were looking at houses in Memphis and Austin and living costs. And then we were looking at, practices available. We were looking at, places to start up, places to buy practice, jobs. We always had the idea that, or not always, but we got the idea that, I could work and make money while Danielle did the startup just because of our personalities. She is more detail oriented and she's also, very outgoing and can really connect with the patients, which is super important for a startup, is getting out in the community, connecting with the patients.
Yeah.
And so that's been huge for her. I mean, her reviews, if you go and read her reviews, they're just glowing on her and the office and everything. So that was awesome. A really good fit for her personality versus with my skill set of being able to do implants and surgery and stuff. It was pretty easy to get a job where I could make, an associate job where I could make a pretty good income to support, our loans and our living expenses and then our startup expenses while she's getting the practice started.
Well, you guys, that's a sweet setup where it's yes, I'm doing a startup where, everyone worries about not being able to pay the bills or make any money or draw any money for yourself for, 3, 6, 9 months or whatever. But your risk level for the two of you with how you have things set up was very low because one of you could just do dentistry somewhere else while the other one's trying to do the startup. And even Danielle, you were planning on associating through this. And did you associate through the startup a little bit?
So I worked for an office when we first moved here. And the minute that we put our stuff, it was a not good experience at all. And the minute that she found out, like when I posted stuff on Facebook and, of course the assistants see it and they find out about like, hey, this office is opening. I was sent an email that said, I had already given my notice like almost 2 months prior, but I had a month and a half prior. And she went from begging me to stay to sending me an email saying I no longer needed to work out my notice and then stiffing me my last 2 weeks pay.
Oh.
So then I was like, wow, that was awful. And so I was working 1 day a week at another office and I worked there up until I was about a month into my startup, but it was getting so busy that I just didn't need another job. And she was not happy with how successful my practice is about 10 minutes from hers. And one of our mailers accidentally went to her office. And so she was real mad. And she gave me, she was like, these are my patients. I worked really hard, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you don't own the city. Like,
nope.
Get better, not bitter, but people are really competitive and they didn't like something new coming in. So I worked there and I quit. I tried to quit about a month before she let me. I quit end of June, actually. I didn't even finish like a whole month after my office opened. And she asked me to stay until like the end of July. So I did. I didn't want to leave her like high and dry or anything, but it doesn't really work out, or at least it didn't in my experience.
Like you thought it would. Yeah.
But I luckily didn't need it. But no, it didn't work out at all like we expected.
Okay, cool. Well, let's go way back to the demographic search. So if someone is trying to implement George's method, and basically the idea is you're taking small like radiuses, like 2-3 mile radiuses, and looking at the demographics in a large city in that small radius rather than looking at a large chunk of the city. And doing this in multiple places until you find a pocket where the dentist to target or office to target population ratio is a lot more favorable. So tell me how you went about this. Like what were you doing on Google Maps? Like how are you drawing your circles? Like how are you implementing this?
So we kind of knew we wanted to live in somewhere towards the eastern suburbs of Memphis.
Okay.
That's kind of where I grew up, and there's some nicer suburbs out here and nice places to live. And so, that was where we were concentrating our search. And we put a few circles down, and Danielle just sees a place called Lakeland. And I think she just liked the name Lakeland. It's a pleasant name. And so I'm like, okay,
sounds nice.
Let's drop a pin on Lakeland and see what the demographics are and see. And we found out that there are a ton of people that live in Lakeland with a really high income, and there's almost no dentists there. So we really just it was like maybe the third place we checked, and we just happened to stumble upon it. So there's nothing really exciting about that. We actually, I think, kind of lucked into just stumbling on that really great location.
Well, then I'm going to call some BS here. Then on your Dentaltown page, it says we spent probably 40 plus hours doing our own demographic research, trying to find some good locations close to practices we actually wanted to live.
We looked at Austin and we looked at Memphis.
Okay. So this is like, that's all the pre-work. And then once you were kind of like getting serious about it, then you stumbled upon this place.
Yeah.
Okay. So you look at Lakeland and you're like, holy crap, there's a ton of people here and there's really good income and there's not a lot of dentists. Why did you find that to be? What was the circumstances? It's Lakeland, right?
Lakeland, yeah. There is no commercial real estate available in Lakeland, which is a good thing and a bad thing. So it's good because there weren't other dentists there. It's bad because it's extremely difficult to find a place to open a practice. And we tossed around the idea of maybe building, but we really, it's a lot of work to do a startup practice. It's also a lot of work to buy land and build a building. And so we wanted to focus on the startup practice and not being a commercial real estate owner.
Oh, fair enough. So I'm going to actually share some of the demographics here, if you don't mind, just so people can get an idea of like what you'd found. So where you were looking in a 3-mile radius, you guys had 40,000 people, 3 dentists, and a mean family income of 90,000. And then the 5-mile radius was 100,000 people and 13 dentists. So just like phenomenal demographics. Sure, these people could drive and maybe, you know, where they work, if they work somewhere else, maybe there's a dentist over there. But there, you found this little pocket where like just there's more people than there are dentists within a very large, crowded metro area. Did the demographics report that you guys ordered, did that like change anything, or did that just kind of confirm what you'd already found?
We actually found the building. The demographics report we did the exact address, because we were visiting Memphis for Austin's birthday, and we were actually visiting the office that the small DSO he works for was building. And we were just kind of driving around Lakeland, trying to see Lakeland, Arlington, and seeing what was going on. And there was a shell of a building, and we were with his parents, and Austin stopped the car, and we all got out and we took a picture of the sign, and it said commercial real estate available. And that's our building.
Now, we were driving by and I pointed at it and I declared that's our spot as we were driving by. And that ended up being our spot.
Yeah. And so we just doing the exact site.
Like, I love this because I feel like in retrospect, everything like seems like, oh yeah, it was going to work out. And it, you know, now that it's worked out, it doesn't seem as like scary. But in the moment, like when you're driving around, you have no clue if Lakeland's going to work out. And you see a spot like that and you just go on an impulse, take a picture, call, start doing some demographics, looking around. What are you going to say?
He's the impulsive one. I'm so risk averse. But he loves stuff like that. That's like his cup of tea.
But that's the kind of messy process that like these, you know, it's like you're trying everything and you're like, okay, we're just going to try driving around and just like checking stuff out and like see what happens. And I feel like that's what you have to do, both for startups and acquisitions. Like you got to be trying everything and eventually something works. And in retrospect, you look like a genius and you know, you are, but at the same time, you also kind of get lucky, you know? Like
I think that I think I remember at that time, we were pretty frustrated because we had been looking, you know, I'd been doing the LoopNet and, you know, wherever else you can look for commercial real estate because I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
But we had been looking, you know, all over the area and just, you know, calling people. And I think we had called the, you know, Lakeland City people, and we had, you know, reached out to people and been trying to find anything, and we couldn't find anything. So we were pretty frustrated at that point because we couldn't find commercial real estate in such a great demographics location. So we were pretty happy when we drove by that building. That's why when I drove by it, I, you know, got so excited and said, "That's it."
Yeah. So how long had you been kind of doing this search? Like how long of a process was this?
It's a good question. Maybe I'd say maybe a couple months, 2 or 3 months. We were living in Texas at the time, so it was really hard. You know, we were living 7 or 8 hours away.
Yeah.
And so it was hard. You know, we happened to be there, and so then we were able to drive around. But doing it through, you know, trying to email people and call people and look on the internet and trying to find stuff.
Google Maps, Street View. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, totally. And then the last question I had, let's see, it's escaping me. Oh, were you looking for acquisitions at the same time, or did you know you wanted to do a startup?
I think Danielle's personality is better for a startup. I'll let her talk about that.
I just like things a certain way. And so I knew exactly what I wanted and everything. He showed me a couple of offices and things like that. And I was like, I don't know. We didn't have any really good options available that we'd found because we had limited our search so narrowly to Memphis or Austin. The best thing that we found was that my childhood dentist was trying to sell his practice. And he's a great guy and he had a great practice in a really good location, but just being in the heart of Austin, it was incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
And in Austin did not have the opportunity he had with the company he worked with in Texas.
Okay.
He worked with me like 2 or 3 days a week, and then he worked at that small DSO 2 or 3 days a week. Okay. So they just kind of transferred him to Memphis.
Nice. Okay, cool. So that worked out for you. So now let's get into the startup process. Give us, you know, you guys had done Breakaway. So you had that as part of your background of kind of knowing, having like a map of how to do this. What were the things that you were super glad you did and you would recommend in a heartbeat to anyone else?
Breakaway.
So Breakaway. Okay. Yeah.
If you do a startup without going to Breakaway, I mean, I think that's just wrong. There's no reason to do that.
It's like malpractice.
Right.
Listening to y'all's shared practices, that was so helpful.
Absolutely.
For a lot of stuff.
Even though we didn't listen to anything you said, you told us we need to find an acquisition and, find a large practice cash flowing acquisition. And we did the exact opposite. But honestly, this podcast has helped us a ton.
Well, thank you. No, and a lot of awesome people have been on the show, so I'm glad they helped. So now you've got the space. So how did you negotiate the space? I remember you posting on Dentaltown. I was reading just today. George Vale, the grumpy resident Dentaltown real estate expert, was throwing some stuff at you. How'd you end up negotiating that space, and how long did it take?
I unfortunately got involved in that project. And we worked with just a local commercial real estate guy. It was actually someone my dad knew, and he did a good job. We didn't do it ourselves. We didn't negotiate the lease ourselves.
Good,
but we did it through him. And our landlord did not speak much English, and he was very difficult. And he would respond, 3 or 4 weeks after, and it was a very, very, very frustrating process. That was probably I'd say that and hiring were the two hardest things for, before the practice opened. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm dealing with my associateship.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. It looked like you were going to have to pay a premium kind of for this space. Seeing, supply and demand, there was not a lot of spaces available, so they could kind of charge more. Do you feel like it feels tight because you were paying more, or do you feel like, we're crushing it? So in retrospect, it doesn't feel like it's that big of a deal to pay that much for real estate.
I would say
you can brag. It's okay.
Without a doubt, it's been great. I mean, so the first month that Danielle opened, she had 100 new patients.
Nice.
And we might have spent like $3,000 on marketing. And so where are those new patients coming from? Her location and her signage and being in good demographics. They weren't coming from us being so awesome because the practice just opened, and they weren't coming from our amazing marketing because we were doing some marketing, and we had, some mailers and some Google AdWords and a little Facebook, but 100 new patients. A lot of it came from the location and the signage. So it was definitely worth paying.
And the demographics. I mean, that's right. The trifecta of, if you're going to do a startup, you better have those three. You better have the demographics, the location, and the signage. You guys were at a very busy intersection that, like, you said that you found out it was like one of the top 5 busy intersections in the city.
Yeah, it's hard to get in and out of like our parking lot because it's so busy.
So it's like good and bad. It's like, I can see your practice, but I can't get to it.
Yeah. So we're on the corner too. And so we actually have 2 massive signs.
Okay.
And I can't tell you how many patients I get that just say, oh, I drove by and I just realized y'all were open. So I decided to come in.
That's awesome. So you just got to consider that, what did I thought it was like $22 a square foot. Did you guys end up negotiating that higher or lower in the end?
We pay about $5,000 a month for 2,600 square feet, but it's a gross lease. It's not triple net.
Okay.
Which is we used a lease attorney. Our commercial real estate guy thought of that. And then we used an attorney to help negotiate the lease. And he was really helpful. We didn't pay rent until our space was done and the day I opened, which was really nice because we were dealing with a difficult landlord. And just, you never know, like Shine equipment order held us up for like 2 weeks. And it's a lot more stressful when you're like, these 2 weeks are costing me $2,500.
Yeah.
So we didn't know how I was going to do, but that was kind of a huge stress reliever.
Okay, cool. So you ended up having to get 2 of the spaces there. They were like 1,300 square foot individual spaces, and you like merged them together and got both of them. And this is for you right now, Danielle, not with the intention of bringing on Austin in the future, but maybe another doctor down the line?
Absolutely. I don't want to work more than like 3 days a week.
Nice.
So
In terms of laying out the space there, so tell me the process. Who did you use? How did it go?
Design Ergonomics, and they were awesome.
Okay.
We did their blocking diagram, and we pretty much followed Breakaway to a T. I changed their cabinets a little bit. Like I have drawers in mine, but besides that, like the space layout is all Breakaway.
Okay.
And they were super. I think we paid $1,500 for a blocking diagram, and then our contractor did a local architect. And I think all of our plans were $4,000 drawn up, and that was electrical and the actual architectural floor plan and all that kind of stuff. So, but they used Design Ergo's blocking diagram to do all that.
Nice. Any hangups in construction approvals and all that stuff? Is there anything that like was like a freak out moment of like, oh crap?
The only thing that really held us up was the Shine equipment order that we did. For some reason, something got held up about like 2 weeks. And so our whole space was built, but our equipment wasn't in quite yet.
Nice.
This is a pretty smooth process. I think that we were fortunate with who we used for our construction, and everything went really smoothly. So
Cool.
No bad stories there.
No nightmares there. So then you open and, you did some marketing here and there, but like, it sounds like you didn't go nuts with the marketing. And why was that? It's like you had a sense that basically the location was going to work out. What were your plans if like you didn't get as many patients as you expected?
I think we would have definitely increased the marketing. We just, a lot of people, I think Jamie Amos talks a lot about having, 500 new patients before you open. But if I schedule a bunch of new patients a bunch of weeks out before I open, none of them are going to show up. If you schedule a patient 3 weeks out, a new patient, they aren't going to come.
Fair enough.
And so we started marketing 2 weeks before we opened, and the schedule was completely empty up until probably 1 week before we opened. And I think it was slammed. She had, she could barely see all the new patients. And so, that was
that's awesome.
Being in a good location and not our amazing marketing. But if we would have needed up the marketing, we definitely
you're ready to do that. Yeah.
Right.
And then so the other thing I meant to ask about the space, you end up fitting 8 operatories into this 2,600 square foot space. Did you equip all 8 of those operatories or just a certain number of them with the plans to equip them later?
4 equipped, but they're all plumbed and all the cabinetry and everything's in them. All they needed is just to drop some chairs and
handpieces and other stuff you need. Okay, cool. So you're working out of 4 operatories right now. What's your team? You said hiring. So how was that hiring your first few team members?
It was awful. It was really stressful.
Yeah.
But I've had the same people with me pretty much. Well, yeah. So I started with 1 assistant and 1 front desk.
Okay.
And they're really great. They work super hard and they work really well together as a team.
Cool.
And I hired another assistant who was straight out of school and she had no idea what she was doing. She did like a 5-week program, but she was really smart. She was really articulate, and it took a lot of finesse because I think my more seasoned assistant was getting a little bit frustrated because, she's kind of this 19-year-old, she didn't know what to do. And so, but Hannah she's awesome and she's a huge asset to the team. I had a hygienist coming in about 1 day a week. And that was just kind of a fluke. She randomly came into my office. The hygiene market in Memphis is super flooded. And there are a couple things that just weren't working out. And then she said like, hey, I got a really great opportunity I can't pass up. Yesterday was my last day. I was like, oh, okay. So I've had a couple working interviews and stuff like that, but I hire really, really, really slowly. And because I don't want to have a lot of turnover, and I haven't had any. And I'm just scared to hire a hygienist because I think they're a huge part of your practice, and they're the
she
first
needs
people.
A hygienist.
I do. I hate doing cleanings.
I was going to say, you're doing all your hygiene right now.
Yeah.
She is, and she desperately needs a hygienist. Just getting ready. 6-month recalls are coming in a month, and I'm going to make her hire a hygienist by then.
Well, because we've had like pretty much every month. For the first 3 months, we had over 100 patients. And then we took the throttle off marketing a little bit. And I think we got like 75 new patients the 4th month. And then this month, I don't know what we're on track to do, but we were gone for 12 days. So it's kind of a weird month, but we're getting back into marketing a little bit heavier.
Yeah.
And I can't keep doing all these cleanings. So
No, you can't. But that's awesome. Like, I think the hire slow, fire quick, like that's what people say. And most people don't have the discipline to do that. They panic and they hire someone that they shouldn't. What's your process and what are the like red flags, like how are you doing your interviews and what are some things that you're really looking for and the people that you're turning away that maybe someone would hire?
I don't really care about, you've worked in 12 practices and you're this, that, and the other. Like, I want to see, do I feel comfortable talking to you? Do I think that other people are going to feel comfortable talking to you? Are you a team player? Are you willing to, I sit there and I clean toilets with my team. So if you're not willing to help out, then, if you think you're too good for that, then you're not going to be a part of this team.
Yeah.
And so they really do. They help each other out whenever they need it. And so I just kind of talk to them and then I just ask my team, I'm like, they know that they have an input on who gets hired in the office. And so they're very honest with who they like and who they don't, without being hypercritical, but they're just, and then sometimes Austin comes in and he kind of listens to like what the hygienist is saying. And I don't realize because my office is unfortunately right in the center of the office. And it was just the way that the floor plan worked out. We had some load bearing stuff we had to work around.
It's some like pillar in the middle of everything,
yeah,
right?
Actually, we do.
Yeah.
And so it's in the lab. And so, but he'll kind of come in and he is just a very quiet observer. And so
this is probably the most I've heard from Austin in my entire life. So definitely a quiet observer is a good descriptor. And also going back to the fact that you needed your own practice. I remember doing a project with Danielle first year of dental school and like, it's good. You just put her in charge of something and she'll get it done her way and it's going to happen. So, it's like, you got to find what works for you and your personality. Start up and, just taking out teeth quietly without anyone noticing. It's great. So with hygiene, hiring, I love that you were just hiring for human beings. Like, it's like, I feel like Midwestern did a good job of that, especially with our class. Like, because they were a new school, I love that they're like, okay, if you have the stats, we'll interview you. But then we just want to find people that are real people. They weren't trying to like filter out just the people who are most likely to specialize. They were like, no, we want to have people in our dental school that are normal human beings. I feel like that's the filter that people should have rather than here's all my credentials and I know how to do this, this, and this. But then you have to untrain them of all the things that they used to do wrong. So it sounds like you definitely have your process down and are picky in a good way, though now you have to do your own cleaning. So it's double-edged sword there. How many do you end up interviewing, end up per week or per month for the position for hygienist right now?
She's probably had like 7 or 8 different hygienists come through the doors, I would say.
Well, and the Memphis hygiene market is so flooded that like they graduate. They've got like
They're
a 4-year program,
desperate for a job,
and a 2-year program.
Really?
Very. But every single one of them, wants, X amount of dollars an hour, and I don't know, and I don't like it when people like try to force me to make a decision. So I'm so hem-hawy. But they like, if they don't come in and like hand me their resume, and then when they hand their resume to Jenny, if she doesn't tell me, hey, I really like them or they're really, really well put together, if they don't get past her, then they're surely not getting to me.
Okay.
And
so you've got some filters in place.
Yeah.
That's the only reason you've seen 8. It's not that you've had 8 people come in. It's that 8 people made it to you.
Yeah. And so, and it's hard like doing working interviews because I'm working too. And so,
right.
And then like, that they're nervous. And so you don't want to be too hard on them. And so,
yeah.
And a lot of them are new grads. And so it's like, do I get somebody who's more seasoned or do I get a new grad and try to train them? Because training's kind of a pain and they have to hit the ground running. We have 1 hour for new patients and it is stacked solid.
Sure.
And so when I'm doing it, I go in between like every half hour, there's like my schedule is completely staggered with new patients.
Okay.
And it's a lot.
Yeah.
And so they have to be ready to go.
Yeah, totally. That is a hard balance of like experience and like knowing the demands that are going to be on them right away versus like, sorry, you can't just dink around and like clean slowly. Like you're going to have to be able to do everything, turn it over and really crank because that's what we need. That's what we're hiring for. But I want someone that I can mold. So, you know,
Yeah.
good luck. So let's talk about, if you're okay with it, a little bit of financials on the practice here. So some people talk about doing a startup and like be prepared to not make any money for a year, but you guys went to Breakaway, so that's not the case. So tell us about it. Are you comfortable sharing collections, productions numbers for your months or not really?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, cool. So first month in, how did it end up going?
$45K.
Okay. That's collection.
Adjusted production.
Okay. Which is going to follow with your collections. You know, it takes a minute.
And so year to date, like we've been open since May 21st. So we've had $330K in adjusted production and I've collected just over $300.
Okay. So I think you guys had mentioned that your overhead was working out to be somewhere in the 40s, 50s, those first few months. And maybe it's because you were taking a lot of those exam and cleaning and all these other codes and you didn't have as many team members to pay. Is it still kind of lining up in that range?
Yep.
Cool. So it's working out.
It's doing good.
That's cool.
Yeah, so her third month then, she doesn't like to brag on herself, but I'll brag on her. She did $95,000 in her third full month of not production, but adjusted production. So that's after all insurance adjustments. She collected, I believe, $85,000, and that's just lagging from the month before having lower insurance production. And so, that was all. It was $95,000 of collectible production she did in her third month. Then
that's fantastic. That's phenomenal.
3 to 4 days a week. So
and yeah, that was on probably 3.5 days a week.
Okay.
So she is, a lot of that was the location, but a lot of that is the fact that she is just an incredibly hard worker and super good with patients and really good with her team. And so yeah, she's doing really good.
That's awesome. So you guys are crushing it, and congrats on all your success so far. Looking back, do you feel like you would have done this sooner? I mean, the journey is what it is, and sometimes it takes this long to have an opportunity to get to a place where you can do this. Some people are all about as soon as possible out of dental school, and other people are really grateful for the time that they've had to learn these other procedures and see what else is out there. What would your advice be to people?
I think that what we did was good for us. Let's see, July 2016 is when I finished that residency.
Yeah.
And we actually started working. And so we had, the $720,000 in student loans things. We didn't pay any of that first year. I wasn't making any money. And she wasn't making a lot of money either. And so we basically just paid the interest on the loan. So, and then, over the next 2 years, we were, working different associate jobs. We, Danielle worked in Medicaid, worked in private practice, worked for corporate, went to a small town. We decided we didn't like the small town.
Yeah.
And so we learned a lot of things about ourselves. We learned a lot of things about how to be a dentist, and, a little bit about how to run a practice. Not a lot about that until we actually had our own. That's really the only way to learn, I think.
Yeah.
But it worked out really good for us because now, we had $720,000 in student loans 2 years ago. And now, if we wanted to pay the rest off today, we could. And we have our own startup practice. And it was just the way Danielle likes, which is, what she needs. So I think it worked out good for us.
No, that's all. I think you mentioned that you actually have a positive net worth now.
We just found out this past week. We just realized we have a positive net worth, so that felt good.
To go
After
from
being 720.
Yeah. How much was do you mind the costs on your total startup costs?
Yeah, our loan ended up closing just over 400. I think it was like 412.
Okay.
And that includes our working capital and everything like that. We did about $20K in personal expenses before starting. That was like floor plans, the attorney, lease deposit, unlock the PPO, Breakaway, all that good stuff. We've paid ourselves back that. And then we did about $250K on construction. Our tenant improvements we had $30K from the landlord, so it wasn't that much, but all of our cabs were included in that.
Okay.
And we did about 85 in dental equipment. IT was about 22. Our signs, our huge signs, were about 7. And then just 20K in miscellaneous working capital and about 16,000 in supplies. So
that's awesome. So pretty efficient design and construction. What was it? There was a comment in our Facebook post from Austin about like, this isn't a freaking model home that you're like trying to impress everyone with. It's a place of business. Like it's your dental office. You don't need some elaborate build out with granite countertops and all that crazy. Like I'm sure you've got a beautiful office. I actually haven't seen pictures. I've seen that the 901 Dental is the name of it. Is that the area code 901?
Yeah, it is.
That's awesome. So, but what are your opinions on? Tell us how you really feel about fancy build outs.
Oh, I don't think I need to go on a rant on fancy build outs, but for $400,000, we built out 8 ops and equipped 4, and office looks really nice. You would never guess that it was an affordable build out. If you saw pictures or looked at it, and it's not your dream home. It's a place of business, and it really is, and it needs to be treated as such. And so we were really careful about, how is this going to work for our business versus, does this make me feel good emotionally?
Right. Does it give me warm fuzzies, or does it put cash in the bank?
You reminded me of that often.
I did.
But it was important. But I mean, honestly, when you listen to patients talk, and this was a huge eye opener for me. Like we've got the dimensional walls, and daily I get comments on those. And then the stinking TV is like $150 TV. I'm like, oh, wow. It's like, that is quite frankly the cheapest thing in this room. But I am so glad you think that I am fancy now. They don't understand that scanner that's sitting in the corner cost you $100,000 or
a small
$50,000. Yeah. But they see this TV on the ceiling and they're like, wow. Oh, I have Netflix? This is so cool.
Yeah.
Those are the little things that people notice. And so the things that dentists put all this like emphasis on, they're just really not. And Austin always tells me we do have some swag, but we do not have much because he gets so sassy with me whenever I try to buy stuff. But it's like the little, like all of our patients, like we don't give them anything fancy. Like people give these $15 coffee mugs or whatever. I give them a koozie that says grit, grind, floss, because the Grizzlies, their slogan is grit, grind. And people think it's the coolest thing in the world. And it cost us 30 cents.
Nice.
So
what was I going to ask? What are dimensional walls?
Have you ever seen like in Scott Luna's practices that kind of, it looks like the wall is 3D and they're like these panels?
Oh, yeah. No, I saw your posts on, it was in the thread. Yeah. On the Dentaltown thread as I was scrolling through. Yeah. It's like these squares that give it like this texture.
They're basically really stiff cardboard that you glue onto the wall, but people go crazy over the dimensional walls. So
our contractor had never seen them and he was just floored and he thought they were, I don't think he really wanted to do them at first, but I was really insistent on them. And ever since then, I mean, we had a ribbon cutting with the Chamber of Commerce and I had probably 20 people ask me where I got those.
And where did you get them? Amazon. It's like
it's Alibaba.
No, it's Amazon.
You tried to get them from Alibaba, didn't you?
I think I did. It's probably cheaper.
I don't know how to work Alibaba, so I'm not using it.
That's awesome. And so like, it's one of those, it's almost like an Etsy hack, like a Pinterest hack of just like, you think it's super fancy, but how much, I mean, to put dimensional walls on one operatory's wall, are they in the operatories?
Ours is in our construction cost. And that's, the thing is I don't really have any artwork in my office. Like it's just the dimensional walls and TVs. And so that's all I have. I have one Memphis painting that I have in the lobby.
Nice.
And that's it. And so decor in the office is to a minimum, but it's a modern office and it looks nice.
Yeah. That's awesome. Cool. Well, if anyone's interested, they can look. We'll see if we can. Do you guys think you could find a link to the
brand is called Art 3D. They have a couple of there's a bunch of different styles you can get, but they're called Art 3D.
Art 3D on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, any last words, any last piece of advice for someone who's about to do a startup or who's like scared to do this, or, something that you 100% would do or would repeat?
Just do it.
Just freaking do it.
No, seriously. I mean, if it wasn't for Austin, I probably wouldn't have. I probably put a wine and moan and been an associate for longer, but I was in enough crappy associateships to know that, not only do you make a bunch more money, you have so much more control over your life, your day,
the people
everything.
You work with.
Yeah. Yes. And if you don't like something, you just change it because it's yours and you can do whatever you want.
That's the hardest part about the Army, is that I can't change anything. Go ahead, Austin. What are you going to say?
Between the two of us, I think we might have worked at 10 different offices. And so, I think that goes to show that it's hard to find a good associateship. There's always promises of buyouts or, buying into a practice and, waiting around to try to find the right practice to buy, or waiting till you find the perfect, city you want to live in or whatever. But we're definitely glad that we went ahead and did a startup.
That's awesome. Well, cool. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on the show, and thank you for sharing on our Facebook page. I was trying to find it. For some reason, my Facebook search is broken. So if I search this group for Davis, it searches some foreign Facebook group, and a bunch of other random people's stuff comes up, like Chinese and all sorts of stuff. So we'll see if we can find a link to the Facebook post, and we'll have that in the show notes of your guys's summary for our Facebook page, as well as the Dentaltown page there, and people can kind of follow along with your journey. And please, if this was at all beneficial, please reach out to the Davises and thank them for kind of documenting all of that and for being on the show. So thank you guys for coming on. This was awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. It was so good talking to you.
Cool.
Yeah, it was fun. Thank you.
Awesome. Hey, we will talk with you guys next time.